Hey guys! With the 2016 election just around the corner, many people are likely to have heard of how Donald Trump is leading in the Republican Party. For a candidate such as Trump to be campaigning policies that may be considered extreme, some might wonder, how is Trump leading the Republican primary? Just how? Looking at past elections, Trump's lead is not totally out of the blue. After all, there was George Wallace. Does the name George Wallace ring a bell? Anybody? Well, to compare the two, Donald Trump would be the modern-day George Wallace. George Wallace was originally part of the Democratic Party. However, in 1968, when he ran for the United States presidential election, Wallace ran as a third-party candidate, the American Independent Party, because the Democratic Party rejected his pro-segregational policies. Let's just say he didn't take the rejection well. Wallace decided to run to prevent either majority party candidates from winning. In doing so, Wallace wanted the election to be thrown into the House of Representatives, where he would have sufficient bargaining power to strongly influence the selection of the winner. After all, Wallace was aware that he had a slim chance of winning the election as a third-party candidate. George Wallace ran a campaign that supported law and order and racial segregation. Despite the criticism against Wallace as a racist candidate, his campaign became one of the more successful of past third parties. Wallace's campaign strategies consisted mainly of targeting specific groups of people that would undoubtedly support his policies. Mainly promoting racial segregation, his ideals strongly appealed to the Southerners and blue-collar union workers in the North, whose support enabled Wallace to take the lead in the three-way race, winning 45% of the votes and gaining a substantial amount of votes from the Democratic Party. During this time, Wallace responded to the public's outrage against the Vietnam War by offering a different proposition regarding the issue of foreign policy. He pledged that if the Vietnam War was not won within 90 days of him taking office, he would immediately withdraw U.S. troops. He further used his position as an outsider of the government to his advantage by appealing largely to the public's lack of trust in the government, criticizing the government for consisting mainly of the elites. However, most importantly, similar to Donald Trump, many just found him to be an entertaining figure. So did George Wallace win the election? With the majority of his support coming from the Deep South, Wallace managed to receive 45 electoral votes and 13.53% of the popular vote, a very impressive feat as a third-party candidate. Unfortunately, or maybe thank God, he did not achieve his goal. Yet, Wallace's efforts can't be considered a complete failure. In fact, it was a rather close call in terms of votes. With just a 1% in either Ohio or New Jersey, the result would have been different and the election would have been thrown to the House. Now, then why couldn't Wallace have won? The reason rests mainly on his policies of pro-segregation. Segregation had already been strongly opposed by the government. Furthermore, both major political parties and the media editorials all expressed opposition to the Wallace policy. These factors and its extreme policies did not appeal to the majority of the states, and thus he couldn't have won. Today, he remains the last party candidate to receive a state's electoral college votes. He is also a four-time candidate for president of the United States. He became known as the embodiment of resistance to the civil rights movement of the 1960s. In retrospect, we can say that Wallace actually taught American politicians a lesson. Despite promoting controversial and blatantly discriminatory policies, Wallace's actual election results prove that setting realistic goals and strategic planning can maximize the potential of success. Through Wallace, we can learn that it's very important to respond to the public's demand. Oh, and maybe don't be too racist because you might get shot. How does Wallace connect to us today? Similar to Wallace, Donald Trump is riding on the fervent support of a select group, in particularly the Tea Party movement. And similar to Wallace, Trump and the policies he promotes is not supported by the majority of the Republican Party. Thus, with the striking similarities of being both candidates with extreme policies, it's more likely for a more moderate Republican to win, Mitt Romney. In running the 2016 campaign, Romney can take advantage of the anti-Trump votes whilst truly representing the Republican perspective. Thank you.
Created using Powtoon.